Wow, you're obedient. Wow, hello, welcome. This is the next Newcastle Helix Presents event. This is, of course, Parent Trap. Come on, fantastic. Right, we have one, come in. You know you want to sit at the front. Come on. I love the way everybody just kind of piles in at the back and stands out. Okay, we have one big question in mind today, and it will help us all. And it is, how do we support parents in the workplace? Is this a room full of working parents? Either right now, hands up, everybody. Yes, and more to come. Fantastic, wonderful. If you haven't been to one of our BrainFood gatherings before, the whole idea came from the very people on Newcastle Helix. And they said, what we want is we want a really long lunch break, and we want you to give us some free food, and we want to see loads and loads of caffeine. So we did it, and this is the deal. The other deal with it is there are no daft questions. That's my job, okay? So anything is open to be asked and talked about today, all right? No hierarchy. Now, if we haven't met yet, I don't think there's many, but my name is Charlie Charlton, and my job 24/7 is being a very lucky mum to a lovely 2-year-old girl and a lovely 6-year-old, until next month, boy, both feral. And my paid job is a whole other thing. I was brought to Helix to be the Community Engagement Manager, which is a very posh title. And all it means, if you're thinking, this is like an innovation hub where they talk about space and data and science, and you know absolutely nothing about those things, Charlie. You'd be totally right. I don't. But what I do have is decades of broadcast journalism experience, so my job is to go in there and draw these stories out and tell them to people like me. The whole point of these things is to help change the narrative of our beloved Northeast. In 2023, we are a very different place to what a lot of people think we are, aren't we? So we need to get that message out. We need to get those stories out to the wider UK and globally as well about how unique our talent is here, and that's part of this. So yes, you're going to catch up with your old friends and make some new ones, but start collaborating. So share numbers, share contacts, and keep me in the loop with anything that comes out of it. Okay, talking of which, my partner in crime is Chris Taylor, this man behind the camera here. Say hello to Chris, everyone. He's going to be filming the conversation today and getting some little insights from you afterwards. I know there are some little people in the room today, aren't there? There's a 6-week-old baby over there. Little Maya. Hi. Hello. She's still asleep? Yeah. Next to her, we've got Lottie, who's getting a cuddle from somebody else. Doing pretty well. Who's now how many months old? 4 months old. And then we've got this little one here, Mimi, who's going to be 1 next week? Tomorrow. Mimi's going to, right, so this is entirely welcome, okay? The whole point of this is to get the support for our future generations here and get the ideas flowing. What we've been doing here is creating lots of content, like these events, making films, putting stuff on socials. So let's have a peep, and stay tuned for the screaming kids on this one. Newcastle Helix is the people. That was one of the greatest moments we've had. So all those kids, 9 to 10-year-olds, all from the local neighbourhood, and they were blown away being on here and meeting real people. And the key there is they are our future. So let's move seamlessly on to the parent trap. I want you to ponder for a moment, okay? So whether this is your story about juggling jobs, childcare costs, workplace creches, grandparent carers, mat and pat leave and returners, get your mind whirring on those subjects. What can we do to help working parents? As usual, we have our mic ball at the ready. Who's going to catch it? Okay, go. Go on, Sally, just give it. Okay, go. Right, dead easy. Okay, this is part of the thing. You're talking to her like this and everybody hears you and we throw it around. Okay, I'm going to pass it to you, Nathan. There we go. Okay, and it just bounces around the room. See if you can get it back to Sally. Alongside our expert panel. Are you ready? Okay, please welcome, first up, we have Nathan Bent. Nathan is from Treat NMD, based right upstairs here in the Catalyst. He describes himself as a general tinkerer in all things mechanical and electronic. But I did meet with a CEO the other day who said, and I quote this, "Your work is world-leading and transforming the lives of children and families with complex needs." There is nothing amateurish about that. His other full-time role is as a main carer for his beautiful wife, Kat, who's a wheelchair user, and their son, who has complex autism and ADHD. That is Nathan. Okay, next up we have Beth Hazon. Beth, renowned for her creative work in global advertising. She once made a puddle go viral, that is true. Beth, self-employed, working mum, also founded a childcare provider offering wraparound care in Newcastle. Rising demand means you've now got, I think, four spaces that you're operating from. And for the past 4 years, Beth has also been a trustee of the charity Pregnant Then Screwed, that I am sure many of us know, dedicated to what they call ending the motherhood penalty. And last up, but by no means least, David Orbston Simpson. David. Education Assistant Manager at Newcastle University Business School, which is literally just over the road. Fantastic team there. He works with the students, so there's like 4,000 students, mostly international. I know there's a few in the room here today, right through from induction through to graduation. Now, alongside his husband, David has adopted 2 boys, not long been off leave from adoption leave earlier this year, has a 2-year-old, so we are powering him with caffeine today. I'm with you on that there. So that is your panel. Okay. Newcastle Helix, all about the future. So all of our events have been focused on the future of work in some way. And for parents who want to return to work or parents who want to work more, they talk about the benefits. You've got financial, emotional, professional, social, as well as a boost to our local economy. But most strangely, because they became parents, also want to balance that with family life. Crazy idea. So we're in the home of data. It would be strange if I didn't bring you some facts to set us up here today. So here's my glamorous assistant. Please welcome Nathan, your glamorous assistant. Okay, so we're going to start with the full pie. Okay. Full pie. Go on. Full pie in the wider northeast. There are just over 1.2 million people of working age. It's a lot, okay? Now, not all of that pie are working. Just about 3/4, Nathan. He's a data specialist. That way for anybody's data. There we go. So let's look at that remaining quarter of the pie. These are people who are classed as economically inactive, okay? Now, of that, almost 1/5 of that quarter, go, yeah, just do it. They're not working because they're looking after family or home. Now, this looks tiny, yeah? Do you know how many people are in this pie, this bit? 59,500. 59,500 people just in that. So how can we help these people who might want to get into it, get back into it? Thank you. You're very good. I'm sure you're better on paper. And also what's needed to support other people who want to extend that. So that's what we're talking about. I'm going to start by mentioning the juggle. So, the life of working parents. David, you were desperate to have kids. That was something you always wanted. Has that changed now? Yes. Is that working? Yeah, go for it.
Yes, it has changed. No, I always wanted children. Obviously, being gay, I never thought I'd actually ever get them. And then obviously once we have got them and adopted them, it's nice. But obviously, it does change your perspective on life.
How is, the adoption process is a long one, isn't it?
It is. Obviously, so when we originally did it, so we adopted twice, so it was separate times. So when we got our first child, Joe, it was 6-month process in terms of just being assessed, doing training, and then there was another 6 months of weekly meetings with a social worker, doing homework, writing essays about yourselves and how long you've been together, your family background, doing genograms of your family. So I think overall it was about 100 hours, just short of 100 hours per child that we've done in addition to getting them. So before we actually got children, we had to do training.
Which, look at the two people here. With their biological children, they're thinking, 100 hours.
That would have been nice.
I'm thinking when Kat and my wife, we brought our son home, I remember being sat there looking at it and going, well, what do we do next? I'm like, yeah, 100 hours of training would be nice.
There's still a lot of what do we do next with us, but we know how, if they're going to have a meltdown in the supermarket, we know they're just having a meltdown because they want a particular chocolate. It could be because adopted children come from backgrounds where there's other things going on. So we know that if they're having a meltdown in the supermarket, the best thing to do is just sit on the floor with them, which is quite nice for me.
I do that with my husband. Now, we're bringing in the work element here. So for you, you're a mum of one, but self-employed. How do you do that juggle with all of your other roles?
Well, it's really difficult. So, yeah, it's not easy. I am really lucky because I have family in the area. Lots of people don't have that. I set up a childcare company to solve the problem for me. My need was so great, the only thing I could do was to set my own up, basically. Yeah.
When you say that, so this is school age or preschool?
School age.
Right, and then you just thought there is nobody there to be because the school day does not fit with modern working
Well, the school day
hours.
doesn't fit with it. I think, well, let's be honest, there are a lot of things about childcare that don't fit with it. Why are you giving me 3 hours when my child is 3 years old for the first and foremost? Why aren't I getting it when my child's 9 months old? Support me to go back to work. Why am I in a situation now where I have to choose an economic decision about whether I have another child or not? And there are loads of people out there that can't afford to do it. And that hasn't really, I feel, been the situation before. It's like, do you have a child? Do you pay your mortgage? Do you pay your gas bill? Or do you choose to eat? Now, they are fundamentals of life, I would say. And for them to be even questionable, I've gone really deep, really quickly, haven't I? I just can't help it. But I'll save some of that. But in general, I'm going to blurt it all out in a wanna. But yeah, the juggle is hard. And my juggle was so great, I set up a company to help me solve it.
Yeah. Which now, the rising demand means you've got 4 sites that you're operating from across the North East.
The demand is unreal. We set up a wraparound club in Gosforth because one of my best friends, who was head in a comprehensive, teaching was too much for her. We talked about it before. Caring roles in society are not valued, they're not paid, they're not respected, all of those things. And that is a fundamental issue. So we had an idea. She wanted to get out of teaching. We both have kids that are the same age. We needed some childcare. We're like, that's it. I've got the business acumen, some would say. She has all of the other really important bits about safeguarding that I'm not going to pretend are in my wheelhouse. And now we have, coming up to 4 sites within schools in the North East, and we have about 309 children within our care.
Right, we will get into that in more depth in a second. One of the reasons you were talking about that is because of logistics. Now, I'm imagining you have a lot of very tricky logistics.
I think that's probably the best way to simplify it. So we have a son. He's now coming up to 17. He's autistic. Also has ADHD as well, and lots of other complexities along with that. He's been suicidal since the age 7, all sorts of things that have happened to him. And also my wife, you'll see my wife at the back, it's Kat, who's in the wheelchair. Her life changed fundamentally when our son was 6 months old, and a spinal operation went wrong, and she ended up sadly in a wheelchair. In amongst all of that, I was moved up to the northeast. I was a field manager working for British Gas. Now, if anybody knows what it's like when you don't have a boiler in winter, people tend not to be happy. So if you imagine the worst job in the world where everybody hates you and everything's broken and there's snow coming down outside and nobody wants to go and fix things, that was what that job was. I loved it, but it was very hard, and I was absolutely. It was incredibly difficult. Now things have moved on and changed, but fundamentally, the position I'm now in is that I work for a startup upstairs. I work for my wife's startup, and startups, should I say. We also look after our son and care for that, and I'm also the carer for Catherine and for Tom as well. Now we do have some carers that support us, but everything's a juggle. I mean, all my time is accounted for. The only time that's not accounted is when I'm asleep, and that's probably not long enough, if I'm being honest. Catherine's probably nodding in the background.
So let's move into flexible working. Almost every piece of research shows that the current work patterns are at odds with modern life. So if an employer is offering, and I'm going to do the inverted commas, flexible working, in an ideal world, what would that be for you, Nathan?
It's quite different. I do look at this slightly differently, because for me, flexible working is, tell me what needs to get done, and I will make sure that gets done. Don't tell me the time you need it to get done in, and don't tell me, obviously tell me a deadline, but don't say it's got to be done here, it's got to be done at that time. Give me the flexibility. I will make sure that happens and that will be delivered. For me, flexible working looks like working from an A&E or working in a van out in the car park of a hospital. That has been my normality for the last 16 years. I've done conference calls from the back of a moving van because we've had to go out to appointments and things like that. It's having that flexibility to go, we don't care where you are, we don't care how you get the work done, as long as the work gets done. And that's the most important thing.
Now, you can obviously sustain that because people trust you. You've had that opportunity to prove yourself that I might be in an odd place for this call, but trust me, this is going to work out. What if somebody was coming fresh into the job with that as their story? That's pretty hard.
Yeah, it is, but I think that's where it's really important. So I am a senior leader in my organisation. I've been a senior leader in many organisations. But even when I was a senior leader leading big field teams across British Gas, everybody knew about my story. So there wasn't a single engineer in the whole area that didn't know that I had caring duties, that my wife was in a wheelchair, my son was... They knew all those things. They knew I had very bad issues with depression and I had to be off from time to time. And that's quite a big thing, because not all of us feel free to do that. But one thing it did, it changed everybody's mentality. What it did is it made sure that if any of them had a problem, they knew they could come and talk to me. Because what I wouldn't say to them is, oh, you know what, just get over it. It's not a big deal.
I find it interesting you've just said that, actually, because you don't lead with any of that. No. Your whole thing is just about what you do. All of that other stuff comes secondary, and yet you've been all those people knew that about you.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, always done.
Right.
And I've always done it from day one.
Right. I said to these guys, you're like Mr. Humble. So there you go. Right, okay. David, flexible working. You're like a poster child for Newcastle University Business School, because you think they did it spot on for you, didn't you?
We did. Obviously, we had flexible working, so the university have a flexi policy, which starts at 8 o'clock and you can work till 6 o'clock. But I think we learned a lot through COVID. It doesn't matter what time of day you do the job, the job can get done. Obviously, we do support students, so we primarily should be here when students are here. But actually what we're learning from students is they're not actually here all the time. Yes, they'll attend the lectures and the seminars, but actually they've got their own commitments at the moment. Obviously the cost of living crisis that they have, they do have to work. So actually they're doing their admin type activities in the evening. So they're emailing us at the evening. We're coming into work and getting the emails in the morning and replying, and you're not getting it's delaying the response. So we obviously have some staff where they have care and responsibilities, and we try to be as flexible as possible. We do understand that we support students, so there's times where we should be in the office. And obviously when we are at home, when we work from home, we obviously have core hours to work. But if somebody struggles with that, we'll have an open conversation and go, actually, right, what can you do? What can you do when you're at home? And yes, the university has a working from home policy and we shouldn't rely on our childcare. But if you know you're not going to be at work in the office, is it a problem that your kid is in the next room who's 7 years old watching telly you're doing their homework while you're doing 1 extra hour at work because you finish at 4 o'clock?
What do you think is an unreasonable ask of an employee of their employer?
I suppose it's different. It depends on everybody's individuality. And what I couldn't do is somebody that would come to me and go, I can't work through the day at all and I want to work only evenings. That's not going to be possible because we support students, and obviously we have to be fair to all colleagues.
And that person then said, you are so inflexible. Yeah. You're going to lose all my talent and I'm not going to be able to work with you unless you let me work in the evenings.
Yes, but we will try and be flexible, but we've got to remember that we have to have a bit of fairness as well. So we have colleagues in our team who don't have any care responsibilities, who don't have any children, so why should they pick up all of the activity that happens through the day? So it all depends, would be open to any conversation.
Funny you should say that. So there was a lady who, I can't see she's in the room at the moment, who works in this building and was very straight up about this. She has chosen not to have children, and she said during the pandemic it was an absolute nightmare because I didn't have that, and she described it as an excuse. I didn't have that excuse. I had to do my work all the time and I had to pick up all the other bits. And there is a sense of fairness there, that some people who choose not to have children or can't have children, they shouldn't be at any disadvantage either. Would you argue?
I think there's a big difference as well in terms of what your actual job is. If you work in an office and you have the flexible working policy, fantastic. But as a childcare provider, I have staff. I can't offer that to them. They have to be there at those times for the Ofsted ratios, for the earliest, to look after those kids. So I have to think about other ways of looking after my staff if I can't provide that.
And what would that be?
Oh, I give them free childcare. They can bring their kids along. We're a living wage provider. We will not stick to minimum wage for what they do. They can't live off it, for one. And the job that they're doing is really important. They are looking after people's children. So yeah. So
that's it. And I think actually if you look at the North East, the types of jobs that are typically available in our economy are actually harder in our region to do flexibly, because you're talking about health and care, you're talking about education, retail, transport. Also, pre-pandemic, we had fewer people working from home than elsewhere. I think that might be a little bit different now. Just in the audience, because I know we've got a mixture of all types of jobs. Flexible working, any thoughts on that in terms of helping working parents get back into work? Anybody like to add into that? Any ideas that have worked very well for you, or if you've been office-based or out? Don't be afraid. I know. Can I get this mic pulled? I'm going to come to you, Beth. Because the reason is because, so Beth works in this building. Now she works in this building. But you had a very particular situation when you were pregnant, didn't you?
So I worked for Sciencey, and then we all got made redundant because we dispersed and whatnot. And then they realised they still needed people to run the project, which is Science Central / Newcastle Helix now. And then after that, they went, we still need someone in this space and whatnot. So I went and I had an interview. I spoke to the team, and they were like, do you have any questions? And I was like, yeah, I'm like 6 months pregnant. So, yeah. And
this was in the interview?
That was in the interview. And thankfully, because I'm great, I did get the job. But I started 6 weeks after my child was born. So it was that balance of trying to, flexibly. And at that point in time, we didn't have flexible working in our team. We were a really, really small team. So there was only like 3 of us. And my line manager didn't have children. I mean, she's great. She's fantastic. She's wonderful. But at that point in time, I felt uncomfortable asking for that a lot of the time because I felt, I'm slacking. And so I felt a lot of the time I was, part-time working and part-time parenting, and then you end up doing far too much on either. So, yeah, I think it's followed trait. But now we have a lovely flexible working system.
What is it? How does it operate?
So we have core days, which are Wednesdays and Thursdays, where most of the team are in.
And you have to be in the office, not working from home. Okay. Yeah.
And you do like 3 days a week per the university. But again, it's flexible in the sense of if you want to work from 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night and build up that time. So if you've got, I don't know, a school play to go to, you can go and do that. Which again is a massive change to when I first went back as a full-time working mum, juggling parenting. And
Did you feel the pressure to come back at 6 weeks, either whether that was societal or...
yeah, so
or whatever?
obviously I was quite a young mum, and yeah, it was a pressure of being like, you have to keep in that career. You've got to keep moving. You've got to be visible. You can't just lose that, drop off the earth for 5 years, can you? Because where do you start? You start back from the beginning. And I think working from like the age of 16 in like full-time professional capacity, it was a big change to adjust to. But yeah.
Because that is a very interesting point, isn't it, about whether you want to go back into work. When there's been some really interesting surveys from the CIPD where they spoke to the public, and this was whether the people had children who were 0 to 4 or much older and beyond. And a clear majority said they would support people being off for longer at the start.
Yeah, I had 6 months off with my daughter, and I would not recommend that to anyone.
Just not enough.
And I worked throughout the 6 months as well. So I was in for board meetings, I was in for management catch-ups, I was still recruiting, and I put a lot of that pressure on myself. I also had postnatal depression, so it was not a good mix at all. And then in the end, I went back there, and it was advertising. I was a managing director of an advertising agency in the Northeast, and it was so full on, and the deadlines cost a lot of money. So when it came to flexible working as well, you could have a little bit of flex, but not as much. Because if you miss a deadline, that's like a lot of cash. So I just got to a point where I was like, I'm out. These two things don't exist. So in a moment, and Thea's in the front, she was there when it happened. I just one day just walked in and was like, I am leaving. Goodbye. And that was
Really?
it. Yeah.
And did they understand?
Well, no, I was there for 14 years, right? Like, I'd grown up there, and I really loved my job too. Like, these are great people. And I loved it. But I just could not do it, all of the stuff.
You could have walked away because it wasn't your own business. What happens if it is your own business?
Well, at the moment, I don't run my own business, but I know particularly with, I can talk about Catherine's experience here as well, is that it's very tight, very difficult to try and, I know for her to juggle, particularly she's in hospital a lot, so very recently only just been out of hospital again, so each time you've got to almost restart again. And it requires a lot of ongoing work with any of your customers or clients to know that this is the type of thing that they're getting themselves into, that you've got somebody who's got health issues that may affect it. Doesn't mean the work's not going to happen, but it means that they just have to be aware that sometimes you're not contactable, but it's not, you're not ignoring them. There's a really good reason for it. And I think, maybe we say society-wise, we struggle with that sometimes because it's sort of, you come to work, you do this is how you should do it. And Kat's built a whole process of doing it, but I mean, she's done calls from a hospital bed. She's worked away from there before now. And similar to myself, when I've been unwell, because I had a similar experience to you, where I just got to a point where it popped, particularly after everything we've gone through. And I just can't do any of this anymore. And ended up like losing my memory, all sorts of things. And it took me ages to remember people and all sorts of things. So complete breakdown. And I get that sort of, that's enough. I can't do that anymore. And sometimes you look at it and going, well.
So what would have helped if we come up with a solution here? So does everybody feel that we should have longer off at the start, like as in it's protected by society, by policy, by the employer, or is it sufficient? What do you think, David?
Personally, I think it should be longer. Obviously, my other half took the formal adoption leave, so he's off for 12 months.
Because adoption leave works just like maternity leave, doesn't it? So it's 12 months, yeah.
So it's like so many weeks paid, so many unpaid. So he's taken the full year off. We work for the university, and I got 4 weeks paternity leave, which was a great amount of time.
You got 4 weeks, because the
4
standard
weeks.
is 2, isn't it? 1 to
well,
2.
The university has a policy that you can opt to have 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. I don't know anybody who doesn't select the 4 weeks. But yeah, so it's 4 weeks. And then my boss was amazing through each of my adoptions, and that I built up my annual leave, and it was stressful all year round, but I didn't take my annual leave until I was off. So I had 10 weeks with Joe, so 4 weeks paternity, 6 weeks holiday, and then with Hudson I had 8. So I had 4 weeks and 4 weeks because we had a 2-week holiday that we wanted to take as well. So,
Oh,
yeah,
you show off. Can I just ask briefly on that? So how does it work in terms of pay with the adoption leave? Are you getting any money at all?
So for me, obviously, I got my paternity pay was full 4 weeks paid, and then also somebody's annual leave.
Okay.
Andrew he works for a different organisation, and he got so many weeks paid, and now he's on statutory maternity or adoption pay until week 39, and then it'll go down to 0.
And that we're looking at as a whopping £142 something or other a week, isn't
I
it?
think it's a little bit more now. I think it's 170 something.
Oh, £172.48. There we go. All right, so we're on that. That's where we're at.
That's where we're
okay.
at.
And so that is how you managed to do it with a negotiation with your employer. And you were happy with that?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd like more time off. I do think for generally men who do the paternity leave, it's 4 weeks, and 4 weeks is not enough, really. Obviously, I've got members of my team who've had babies, and they've had 4 weeks off, and it's been great, and they've come back to work, but obviously they've had other issues gone on. The baby wasn't very well, they've stayed in hospital a little bit longer, and it's how do they manage that time. So I do think more time off for fathers as well as mothers is better.
I'm going to ask the dads in the audience here. Okay, hands up. Who had 4 weeks off paternity? Oh, Gaurav has. You had 4? You had 4? Right, okay. 3? 3 over at the back. 2? 1? None. None.
I knew that was going to be you, John.
Generational. Okay, can we get a mic ball over here? Okay, John here. Okay, I don't want to be outing ages and things like that, but how long ago are we talking here with
Back
the
in
kids?
the Middle Ages, Charlie, really.
Middle
It's just
Ages.
because I mean, in those long off days, I had to take annual leave. I didn't get any paternity leave, which was enormously stressful on my wife, on both of us, really. She suffered from postnatal depression. We had a particularly challenging young baby for the first 6 months of his life, and it was really, really tough. And I think it sort of framed relationships at a very early stage, really. So quite often, I'm not giving secrets away, I would come in from work and my wife literally hadn't had time to get dressed. You know, if it hadn't been for a good support network of friends and my mother particularly, really, then I hazard to think what would have happened. But it was just a really, really difficult time.
So would you support a policy whereby the paternity leave, which is now statutory 1 to 2 weeks, that would be extended? Do you think that would be a good idea?
I think I would. I mean, I'm in the privileged position now of chairing a company which we're one of the largest housing associations in the North East. And I think one of the few good things that have come out of COVID and lockdown is a completely different approach to flexible working. And I like to think that we are progressive and open to ideas from our staff, really. And one of the things, if I could just go on, one of the things we've completely kept one of our departments, the customer service department, very flexible approach, because quite a number of those people are part-time, quite a number of those people are women returning to work, and they've actually said we can do a much better job by being home-based. Productivity, I mean, we were at a very high level. Productivity and customer satisfaction has gone up even more, and we're really pleased with that. We're very proud of that sort of interactive approach that we've got with our staff. So there's no such thing as a daft idea, and we're just trying to keep a very, very flexible approach to that, particularly from the men, you know, because I think we're in even more challenging times for being a parent, something that Beth and I have spoken about, really. And I just think we're trying to be as receptive as possible for any bright ideas and any flexible approaches.
And it's interesting there, so that was with the customer service department, so
Yeah.
they could work from home, but the
Yeah.
construction side at Benicia, you've
It's
got to be
harder,
on the job,
obviously,
haven't you?
But Beth's right,
Yeah.
you've got to try and find some offset and some sort of, because they say, well, what about us almost really? So we try and find ways, practical ways of working with them. It's not always easy because we're dealing with plumbers, electricians, all sorts of people, very hands-on, and you can't do it as easily really.
Would you mind throwing the mic ball to, I think it was this gentleman here. Did you say that you had, was it just 1 week off? Yeah, get that mic ball to. What's your name? This gentleman here.
Jonathan.
Jonathan, so what happened there?
It's not really not really very good really. I'm a solicitor, so I was given the 2 weeks off, but I was mid very large deal, so I probably had more like 4 days, and during that time I was on the emails all the time as well. So.
And did your client understand that, or did that just not matter?
Yeah, I mean, the client at the time was very appreciative, but it just had to be done. There wasn't really anyone else that could have done it. What I was involved in at that particular time. I was just fortunate that my wife was okay, the baby was okay. Actually, I think I just had 1 week for both children. But yeah, just fortunate that it worked out okay, really.
Wow. Do you think it should be extended?
I mean, it definitely should be, but there's always going to be people like me that
It's not going to make
for
a
whatever
difference to
reason don't do it.
What are people's feelings about, I mean, you're all nodding there and just saying, that yes, there's just sometimes the job just has to be done, and that's the deal, it has to take priority. Does everybody get that?
So
Understand that?
Yeah, so we understand that. Yeah, because I mean, I often talk to Catherine about it, because there are times when it's like, I am going to be home late, I've got to work on this has to be finished, I know we've got other things planned, but we've got something that's riding on it, because particularly we're a small business, we're a startup, so we are relying on certain deals to keep everybody employed. And we have to do something. My work involves a lot of legal work, it involves a lot of boring contract reading and things like that. No offence to the solicitor in the corner there. But it's a necessary thing, and I understand why it's necessary. And they have very tight deadlines. It's like, then things will change in an instant. And I've always worked in industries where there has been those things where things have got to happen. It's like where I worked before. If someone hasn't got heating in their house, it has to be fixed. Yeah,
There's a non-negotiable there.
Yeah, there are some non-negotiables. Yeah,
Okay.
So and we've got to accept that, and that's the whole point of this. It's flexible working. It shouldn't just suit us. It should also suit the employer as well. And it's just getting that balance sometimes, because if you go too heavy one way, then you just end up with everybody being to whatever they want in a business that collapses. So, and then nobody's employed. So you've got to find the middle point somewhere.
Tricky.
It is, but I think the person that doesn't understand is my son. I've got to do this work, but I just want to go to the shop. I just want to play football.
I regularly meet other mums there was one of them at the school gates who says, right, I go and do the collection, and then I come back, and they know when mummy's got a headset on, mummy's not available for an hour. I was like, how? How do you do that? Everybody knows that there is no option. I'm just tapped out. Right, childcare costs. Let's get into this. Nationally, okay, there are almost 60,000 early years providers registered. So this is private nurseries, we're talking schools, childminders, charity groups, community groups, all of that. Between 2010 and 2021, the price for 25 hours a week at nursery for a child under 2, this is nationally, rose by 59%. But I've been delving in figures. I love this. So in the Northeast, the median hourly rate, so this is, and it doesn't matter whether your child is under 2, right up to school age, £4.50 an hour. That's the median rate at the moment, according to the childcare providers. Ringing in, is that fit? Right, okay. What that means is if you look at it across the board, and we talk about trying to entice talent to the northeast and talk about, you know, disposable income balances and all of that, we're cheaper. We are comparatively more affordable than other regions. But does it feel that way, everybody? What do you reckon? Any thoughts?
I can't comment because I don't have to pay childcare.
You don't pay any childcare. How?
Because my two children are adopted, we were fortunate that we got them at 18, both of them 18-month-old and just nearly 2. But we got the 2-year free, when they're 2, we got the 15 free hours. So we already get that, which is, you know, it's being proposed to be rolled out for all 2-year-olds, but we already got that.
And has 15 hours been enough for the two of you?
It has been for us, obviously. Me and Andrew had a conversation, and obviously I work for the university, I work full-time, I had the higher wage, so that was maintained. With when people have children, you kind of have that conversation, are we going back to work full-time, or are we going back to work part-time? Andrew went back to work part-time flexible, so obviously some weeks he will do more hours, some weeks he will do less, so they're quite good for him. But it was enough to go, right, I can guarantee you I'll be available these 2 days, because these are the 2 days that the child will be looked after. Right.
And that is regular booked in. You've got that covered.
Obviously, with any childcare provider, you get your days once you're booked in. You get charged regardless.
Yes, exactly.
So regularly every week, that's those 2 days were his working day.
Do you want my parent hat or my childcare?
I'm going to do both. Okay, parent hat first, Beth.
Parent hat, my childcare costs when my daughter was in nursery were more than my mortgage, and she was in part-time.
They were more than your
And
mortgage.
she was in part-time. And my mortgage, I've got a mortgage. It ain't a cheap mortgage.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that must have affected your decisions about work.
Yeah, it did.
What did it mean?
It meant that I had to stay for longer until I worked out what I wanted to do, I guess. You know what I mean?
You didn't have that safety net. You didn't have the luxury.
Didn't
you
have
just
the safety net at all. No, I saved up to have a baby. I was off work for 6 months because I couldn't afford to live off statutory maternity because it doesn't cover any costs to have a life.
You will only go to the park and drink water.
And back again.
So that was you with the parent hat on, you with the childcare provider hat on.
Where do we start? So we are highly regulated, so regulated. We are told about our ratios, how many kids we can look after. If you are on the Ofsted register for early years, again, highly regulated.
How many is it ratio-wise? Because some people are a long time away from this.
1 to 8, but if you're in a nursery, it is smaller than that. And essentially the way that nurseries are set up is that you get funding from the government at 3 years, but that funding doesn't cover the sessions, does not cover the sessions that it takes to deliver from the nursery. So when you're in a situation like we are at the minute, when you have...
As in for you to pay for the rent, the maintenance, the staffing, the food, everything.
Doesn't even touch the sides.
Right.
But we're also dictated by how many children we can take. And it's really interesting at the minute because private equity firms are also eyeing up childcare. And they're thinking, right, okay. And I think private equity own 82,000 childcare places in the UK. Right? That's terrifying. Because when private equity are involved, they push for profit. That is their main aim. I'm sorry if there's anyone from private equity.
Is there anybody from...
Okay, yeah. And they push for it, which means that you're not going to get nurseries wrap around in areas that aren't going to create them profit. Now, that's already the case, but that's just going to get worse. Like, private equity should not be around social care.
The other side of that is they would say, well, nurseries were closing right, left and centre, and unless we go in there and invest and set these things up, you're not going to have anything.
Absolutely, but the government could do something right.
What should the government do?
Well,
they have changes afoot at the moment. You were talking about this. So from September 2025, if you have a kiddie who's 9 months old, you're going to be entitled to 15 hours?
Yeah, 15 hours.
15 hours. And then that stretches up. So that is the start of a change there.
It's 15 hours through term time, so you have to take into account that it's not half-term holidays or anything like that. So you have to be prepared that it's, for those weeks, you haven't got any childcare.
Right, okie dokie. And that's if you're eligible. Right. Okay.
They've also, every kid's going to get a free breakfast club space. Every school's going to offer free breakfast club space. They're going to reduce the hours. They're going to reduce the threshold, so it's not going to be 3 years old to get the hours. I've read somewhere about 9 months, but it's also really interesting. And I'm quite cynical about it, probably because of Pregnant Then Screwed. And it's great that these things are on the agenda, but I also feel in some way there has to be some benefit. And the benefit is it's because they want votes, right? And they realise that we have loads of parents whose votes are very, very important, and childcare is a really important issue to them because of how much it costs, and therefore they say they're going to make changes, but currently the changes that the current government have said they're going to make, it would cost too much money to do so.
Okay, well, just to give a balanced viewpoint here, there was somebody who got in touch with me on LinkedIn who wanted to remain nameless, but is a director in a social enterprise. And what she said was, I'm feeling vulnerable, she's pregnant at the moment, as my childcare costs will equal my salary next year. No one wants a handout. We did choose to have kids, but the childcare system, whether it is under Conservative or Labour, she's very unimpressed with the Labour suggestions as well, is what is keeping inequality a reality for mums. So this whole thing, whichever party you look at, they know they need to sort this out. But are they doing that in order to get women back into the workplace earlier, to get the tax receipts in, to get the national insurance contributions in?
Well, the system just doesn't work. And this is social infrastructure. This isn't a nice to have thing. That's like, oh, childcare. If you want us to work and we bring money into the economy, then allow us to do so. Give us the structure to allow us to do that. We are here, we are willing. But I think Pregnant Then Screwed did a survey in September, and it was 1 in 5 families that have a combined household of £50,000 are leaving the workforce because of childcare costs.
1 in 5.
1 in 5.
And so then everybody ends up receipt of more benefits. So is that a good investment of money? And losing all that talent from the workforce.
You're losing all that talent from the workforce, but then you can look at it another way, where people are going back to work, they're getting their parents involved, for example, then you're getting grandparents are dropping out of the workforce and they're not getting their national insurance points, and then you've got pension poverty. There are so many aspects
to this. It all
to this.
loops into this.
Yeah.
Is anybody who'd like to get involved in this conversation? Get in. Let's throw this over here. Who do we want to start with? Do you want to start with? Oh, Nazmin. Okay.
Hi, I'm Nazmin, and I just wanted to add something to this, that I am getting deeper and darker into the subject, but
Welcome.
we also need to remember that financial independence has a very important link to domestic abuse as well. So it's not just about, are we keeping them, it's about being at home and being on benefits. It could be the difference between saving someone's life and, statistically, we know that women who are pregnant and who are, on maternity leave are more likely to be at risk of abuse because they're alone, because they're financially vulnerable, because they're not getting the same level of wages that they normally do. And when they return, they're also more vulnerable because A, they're already worried whether they'll perform well, and that's just a natural thing that they're going back to work, oh, will I be able to do the same job again? And perpetrators do feed into those insecurities and say, no, you aren't good enough. And if you then have financial troubles and worries on top of that, I can't even afford this, and I can't leave a domestic abuse situation because the childcare costs are so high that I can't save myself. That in itself is a real problem that the government needs to address.
Nazmin, do you think that there are various options that are being offered around the world for alternatives to sorting out the rising costs of childcare? Is there anything you think would be a better way forward? Should it just be cut down, like a specific handout that goes directly to the childcare providers so they can do it cheaper? Or would you think of some other way?
I know there are lots of easy ways to do it, and I don't know why it's being overcomplicated. I do think childcare providers deserve a lot more money for what they're doing and the service they're providing, especially because it's not just about, Beth Mensch talked about the profit element, but it's also, I remember when I was looking for childcare providers, when I was going back, I was concerned about the ratings of some of them and the information from them, and I was like, I don't care how cheap they are, I'm not sending my child there. I used to live in Oxford at the time, and when I told my mum, she said, fine, get this place in the one that you like, which was more expensive, but at least I had that confidence that she would be safe there. And my mum travelled for 6 months from Newcastle to Oxford every single week to look after my daughter for 3 days so that I could go back to work. That's the drastic measures we took for that reason. And so money is important to having, you know, a good quality of childcare. Give them the money. But yeah, it is as simple as you could just pay them directly so it isn't being used for, I don't know, whatever they think it's being used for. Because to be perfectly honest, I've never seen anyone use the childcare element of the benefits for a Mulberry bag. It has always gone for something quite important. But if they have that much concern, then fine, give it straight to the childcare provider. And there will be various other ways to do it. Like, fine, give the vouchers or give whatever it is that you care, but do something about it.
I don't know about anybody else, stunned by your mum. Your mum did that for 6 months.
6 months until we managed to get our nursery place, because my career was really, really important to me. So I'm a lawyer by profession, and it's something I've always wanted to do and always known. And my daughter was an accidental surprise, to the point that I went on maternity leave. So my due date was the 15th of February. I went on maternity leave on 13th of February and was in labour the next evening, because that's all I knew in my life. Like, I just knew how to work. So at that point, when I was making that decision, do I extend it? You know, and it would be unpaid leave as well. Do I have to extend it for another year or not? Mum thought, yeah, she ain't going to cope with being at home. I'm just going to have to make that journey for her.
Wow. Can you pass the mic ball on just a little bit more?
Thank you. So just talking about the cost here, I mean, because both me and my wife, we both come from different countries, we don't have family and support around here. So, I mean, we know very well what the cost is because we ended up remortgaging our house for that. Now, my wife went part-time working after that, and it was only for 3 days. And still, there were certain months for 2 children, we were paying £1,400 a month. Now, that's only for 3 days. I understand that in North East, it's cheaper in comparison to the rest of the UK. However, the wages are incomparable, much less as well. So just to add on to that, and I think majority of our benefit system, the whole support system from the government, almost tells you that leave job, sit at home, you'll be better off. Because when you look into all those things, so for example, now, my son is in year 3, you pay for school meals because you're over a certain threshold and they won't get the meals. Whereas if we weren't working, then that's free.
Right, we're opening the Pandora's box there. If you looked at that on paper and did the maths, would you make the choice to get free school meals and reduce your income to get those free school meals?
I guess now it's irrelevant because that's just for the school meal we're talking about. But when we were talking about the childcare, I guess at that point, it would have been much more financially beneficial. But we both took the decision that, no, we want to keep continuing working because you're looking at long-term career prospects. But you end up remortgaging, taking loans and paying much more for that.
Yes, indeed. We're keeping the mic ball over here. I'm going to pass this over to Alan Pettit. If anybody doesn't know, this man here has an extraordinary way with analysing very complex data so I can understand it as well. I think one of the facts I actually looked up, because I was trying to see this, how do we compare with other parts of the country? So the greatest spend in proportion to income is inner London, where one parent can expect to spend 71% of their weekly take-home pay on childcare. 71%, and that's why they'll then potentially choose to just step out of the workforce. What are your thoughts?
I feel like you've walked me to the top of a very tall ladder there. Like, set me up for a fall with that introduction. So I was looking at some stuff before today about the OECD, the kind of European Community of Nations, and I think the cost, so it's the average across the UK, I think is 25% of income goes towards childcare. In Germany, it's 1%. So, and in Germany, it's state funded. So it's taken from taxation. They've built a system that works. And I think the issue that we've got in this country, and this is across the board with welfare, is that the government looks at a very narrow definition of success. So it looks at that particular measure. So we want to encourage people back into work, so let's push down how much we pay for out-of-work benefits, that kind of thing. But actually, if you start to open it up and look at the wider societal benefits of putting more money into these systems and supporting people more effectively, it pays itself back. So we talked already about the kind of, if you keep people in work, there's more taxation income, there's kind of more jobs, there's people then need less support elsewhere. The same is true of childcare, the same is true of schools, the same is true of health. All of these things, if you put more money into them, you support people and you make them more effective, you make them more productive. There's all these massive issues that are kind of structural things across the country. So the Northeast, again, we talk about people, you've got a choice to have a child, that's right, but in the Northeast, the population is growing more slowly than in other parts of the country. There are bits of the Northeast, I think Gateshead and Sunderland off the top of my head, where there are fewer people living there in the last census than in the census before. That's a problem. There shouldn't be the case that there's bits of the country that people are abandoning for whatever reason. And so we need to build something that enables all of that to work. I've got a very particular point of view on this as an issue because we had our son 4.5 years ago. I took 3 months shared parental leave with him. I was the first person at my employer to do that. I had to sit with HR and work out how to do it. We had to go through the paperwork together. You get paid statutory rate. I had to borrow Kate's leave because that's how it works. Again, if the thing that's frustrating about this is that there are options and there are alternatives in other countries that we could just borrow. We don't have to come up with anything. So Spain, they pay 4 months full paid leave that's the father's or the partner's leave. So they don't borrow it, it's theirs. They can use it or not, but it's there and it's theirs. Sweden's very similar. Various countries that do that. And
How can the countries afford to do that?
Well, the idea is that you're building a system that encourages a better split of caring responsibilities. So if you look at and Beth will know all about this, with the motherhood penalty, if you look at the gender pay gap, it opens up at the point at which people have children. So the gender pay gap in this country for people without children is it's between 5 and 10%, depending on age. If you take that and then you look at the point of birth and you look 15 or 20 years after birth, it's closer to 30%. So what happens is you've got a gap that's bad enough as it is, and then when someone has a child, it goes like that. And so the reason for that is that women take on the vast majority of the caring responsibilities. If you start at the very beginning by encouraging people and expectation setting that men have leave they ought to take when the child is born and they ought to look after that child, learn how to do it, be present, do all of that stuff. What you do is build a more successful, more balanced, more resilient, more robust economy that's better off overall, and you're bringing that talent and you're keeping that talent in. So all the things we're talking about with how you...
And that's
kind of
being done right now, already somewhere else.
Yeah.
We're just not doing it. What are your thoughts about that? Go on, David.
4 month off.
Yeah.
You'd like the 4 month off?
Yeah,
I love the way you
full
describe it
pay.
as off.
Well, yeah.
It's
Not a
like
holiday,
no
but-
sleep, 24 hours a day. You're kind of doing like 10,000 loads of washing a day.
But
yeah.
it's about building relationships with your child
It
as well.
is,
And that's
very
you can't-
much.
in the early stages of, obviously, when you have a child naturally, it's the bonding that you do with the child in that short period of time. See, what we can see from adopting the children is they don't have that same connection of trust that we have, and we have to work harder to build that trust with them because they're a little bit older. But if you had more time, 4 months as a parent, as a father, to bond with the child, they'll learn quicker.
Yes. And the benefit to you as a family unit, the benefits all round. It makes sense. Why aren't we doing it then?
I'm probably not going down I'm trying to say it diplomatically. I think sometimes, as is always the case, the obvious answer is not always the answer that everybody looks for, because it's very difficult sometimes for people to see that they need to change. But when you're trying to, we talk about, if you look at a big business or a big corporation, you try and get that to change a way of working, for example, it's immense amount of work. Now you say we want to change a whole country that has been set in a certain way, has got a certain mentality, and has had that mentality, not for decades, for hundreds of years. And you say we want to go and turn that straight away. It can happen. It can happen in lots of places, but it's something that you have to make a physical decision. You're going to do that over a period of time and put the right laws and the right sort of regulations in. But I think the way I look at it is that actually maybe we're thinking it slightly differently. We could spend ages trying to get governments to do it, but actually as businesses, most people are employed by a business, be it a public company or not. Well, actually, why don't we just start there? Because that's fundamentally what I've done in lots of other places. So we talked before about flexible working. So when I worked at British Gas, I developed the first remote technical help desk. So what that was is...
you see, this is what I'm saying. You did a really big thing and you've just just popped it in there.
Well, yeah,
Wow.
but then the thing is that you looked at it and when we've got all these engineers all over that are struggling to make their life work to do the proper engineering job, because as the gentleman said before, if you have somebody who's a builder or a plumber, and I want to say I trained as a gas engineer, so that's how I ended up. So yes, you can get out and do different things as well, so let me say that. So I've been in that world, I know what it's like. But for me, it was more about, actually, we've got these skills here that are being misused, that aren't getting the best ability. I had a perfect split, so we were 50-50 male and female as well, and that's what I aim for in most of my teams, because you should have a proper balanced view, and that's what I aim for. But that whole thing was built on two real clear tenets of having trust, so I trusted them, and real clear direction as to what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. But also it was built on the whole idea that this has to work for you and your life, but we have a customer at the end, and those are your own engineers. We need to make sure they deliver for that. So we talked before about evenings. Well, we had evening issues, but actually we had somebody who really honestly was much better working in the evening and was happy to cover those evenings, and that worked for us in that particular time. So in that case we did do, and they covered the evenings, for example. But again, if you lead that way, then eventually you get to the point where if you want to look for a role model, you don't need to look abroad. You just look through all the corporates and the companies that are going, sorry, but why are we not doing this? Because we're doing this internally.
So there are a lot of enlightened companies who are basically then, if they listen to their staff and they suggest the ideas, things can happen. There's definitely something we've looked at in terms of Helix on that. It also can happen within communities and charity groups. I'm going to bring in Siobhan's over here. Can we get a mic ball over to... So this is Siobhan Sargent from the Sunshine Fund, which is a fantastic charity. Because we've been talking about costs there before, Siobhan. I wanted to bring you in on this. I was listening to you, but I was also thinking at the same time. Because it's true, it is true, isn't it, that raising a child with disabilities is 3 times more expensive, isn't it? And that's just for the basic standard of care.
Absolutely, that's been proven. First of all, I'm just going to say I've got an irrational fear of the mic ball.
Oh.
I'm not sure why. I don't know where it's come from.
Don't be scared. Keep it close. Keep it close. Go for it.
Yeah, as Charlie says, you know, we're here today representing the Sunshine Fund. We're a charity who support families and parent carers of children with disabilities, and primarily we are there to provide them with equipment to support the children, you know, to live safely and comfortably. But actually, we do a whole plethora more than that. And actually, what we do a lot of is providing support services and just sometimes a listening ear to parents who have children with disabilities and complex needs. What we're hearing more and more since we've opened things like our Families Helpline is just the level of the struggles that parents with a child with complex needs, disabilities and terminal illnesses are facing, the barriers and the challenges that they have in getting back into the workforce, in rejoining the jobs and the careers that they've worked so hard to build. And we hear this, you know, a lot of the time. We know that there's no magic wand to this at all. And we've actually just been, you know, having a conversation quite recently with Bliss, who's a childcare, neonatal charity, who've been campaigning for an awfully long time for extended parental leave for children, for families of children who are spending extended amount of time on the neonatal care wards, which we've never had before. Now that's now legislation, that law is passed and it will come into force in 2025. Is it enough?
Who'll be funding that? Is that coming via the state, or is there reliance on the companies there?
No,
to
no,
fill
that's
that
going to
gap?
be coming from the state.
Right.
That is state funded.
So there is that kind of different perspective about seeing how the world is very different now. Children are surviving through illnesses that they were never ever given a chance with before, but it does raise other complexities.
Megan made a really, really valid point before about us as individuals, us as business leaders, us as organisations in the UK, having the autonomy, but having the empathy to just think about how can we make this, you know, an easier process for these families that they didn't realise that their child was going to be born with complex needs in the majority of cases. This has come as a shock to them. You know, how can we just make this a little bit easier? It's a really, really valid point. We almost don't need the legislation to change. We just need to think about it differently as leaders.
Okay, quick fire. Is there anybody else would like to add this? We've just got a few minutes left. So, best ways to support working parents or parents in the workplace, either what you've seen or what you've heard. Some ideas. Anybody? Oh, yep. Oh, you can. Oh, brand new baby there. Okay.
Hi. So, I mean, I can speak from experience that my company that I work for, they actually made money a non-issue, which I can happily say has enabled me to take as much time, this time with my second or my first child. But the biggest thing they did for me was give me coaching when I returned. And I think we touched on it a little bit before, that I wish we talked about it a bit more. We keep talking about money and things like that, but especially for me, I spent 7 months replacing my cybersecurity knowledge with nappies and whether I cut my son's sandwiches in triangles instead of squares. Like, you know, I really worried about imposter syndrome, and I worried that when I came back, people would be like, oh, she's the crazy sleep-deprived cybersecurity manager, which was true. But I had a coach who told me it was okay to make mistakes, swear at people because I'm tired. How do we manage mood? Just being able to talk more about it. I think, you know, if your business can help you do that, can the government have more of that so we have those conversations? Yes, I am Milo's mum, but I'm also still a cybersecurity manager, and being able to transition through that as well. So.
That's a point that was raised with me from, oh, you're going to applaud that, get in there. And she did it all with a newborn baby. Joanna Unthank, who runs the Child Poverty Prevention Programme over at the Combined Authority, they're doing this really big thing over at St James's Park today with education. It's fantastic. But she was saying one thing was peer support. So another thing is, as the children get older, you reach all these milestones, and then you don't know who to share it with because you're not in those child groups, and you need to create that. So that can be a really great way of bringing a company together holistically. Great suggestion. Any more quick fire suggestions? Oh, here, one here. Oh, Colin over there as well. Quick.
So I think that culture is really, really key, and I'll give you a practical example of that, which is my son started nursery last week. And he didn't even last a week before he contracted hand, foot and mouth. So we're currently going through that at the moment, and that meant that yesterday he couldn't hack the full day at nursery, and I had to finish early and go and pick him up. We had an absolute shocker of a night last night, so I'm incredibly sleep deprived. And I messaged the team this morning and said, look, I'm an absolute mess. I'm going to come in a little bit late. And the team were just really, really supportive of that, both of me leaving early and coming in late. But I think the key thing is I'm in a small team. There's only 4 of us. I'm the only one who has a child. But what I've always instilled is that sort of flexible and supportive approach to all of the things that go on in life. So it's things like, you know, if a team member's washing machine breaks, which did actually happen, and she was just like so stressed about it. And I said, look, just deal with it and come in when you're ready. Because if you come in straight away, then I'll get 7 hours where you're distracted. But if you take a couple of hours, get it dealt with, come in, then you'll have 5 hours where you've got a clear head. And that's meant that because we've built that sort of it's okay, life happens kind of culture, that whenever it's childcare, it's not seen as a special case. It's just life happens. And we're all here to support each other to do it. So I think for me, culture is not just about the childcare responsibilities, but about saying life happens and we're all here to kind of help with that.
Wow, everybody's nodding along with that one. Pass that mic, Paul, very briefly. And we're so tight here. Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's culture, it's communication, and it's empathy. And without that, something was said earlier about the person picking up the things through the day, and it's not fair because they haven't got kids. Actually, they need caution to understand life happens, and they're really privileged because they haven't got anything to worry about. They just do their job. That is very rare that they haven't. Life happens. It does happen. And I think it's all about culture and being open and transparent as senior leaders, that this is what we're dealing with as a family, and it's okay if you're dealing with it too.
So culture is a definite thing. Bounce it across here, right down to the front. One of the other tips that had come in was from Corinne Lewis-Ward. She is an entrepreneur, runs the Creative Heritage Studies. She said, if you're a self-employed working parent, zone your time. Have boundaries for work and family time. And crucially, and this is a thought, prioritise your health, because you don't get any sick pay. So you're going to have to think about that. Okay.
I was going to say, because I've had my own business with my husband, both architects for over 20 years. So lockdown was not just 2 years, it was 20 years of working together. Yeah. And obviously, as you say, you have your own business. There's no maternity pay, there's no holiday pay, nothing. So you do feel that guilt and pressure to just carry on and not even take maternity, really. But you've got that flexibility that, you know, you can stop work at 3, or, you know, you never miss a school run. You don't have to do the childcare clubs, so you've not got that pressure. But I feel where you've been with the holiday clubs or wraparound, you know, 3 kids, holidays were a complete wipeout for me. And that's where, both being equal architects, you know, it was always me taking the hit. He just worked through, you know, that was just...
Even though you were earning the same amount?
Oh, yeah, and
you were the
home
woman...
And
right, okay.
I think we had 14 house moves in 20 years, 2 home builds to the UK, France and back. Yeah, fell on muggins here.
14 house moves?
Yeah, I added it up the other day.
Maybe you should have done a different career.
Yeah.
House to like. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I did go there with the 3 kids for a holiday club is just not financially viable, so I will start my own. So yeah, I thought, oh, on top of running my own business, I'll start a holiday club with another friend who had 5 kids and the same problem, because, you know, you ask a busy mum to do something,
and then she'll do it. I loved when you said 5 kids,
yeah.
Somebody over there just went, no! Oh my goodness. So family-friendly policies, last few minutes, anything to throw into the mix here, either from the audience or from the panel? What should businesses, the state, employers, employees, whatever, what do you think would make a change to help support working parents?
I think I'm going to sum it right up. It's empathy, because if you cannot put yourself in someone else's shoes, how on earth are you ever going to support them? And the only way you can ever do that is by listening, or by sadly having that experience yourself.
You wanted holiday clubs, I remember. You used to go to one called The Hut.
Yeah, so obviously when I was younger, my mum worked for the local council in a park place in the centre. She worked all summer. We would go there with her, and I think they've become lost really. They're not open as much. I've seen parks are parks. They're great, but they don't have that building in them anymore where they have a staff that support after where you can take your kids after park. They build like wooden things and paper mache things. So yeah, I think just having government holiday clubs would be good.
Or all round to David. He's got the ideas. Beth.
I mean...
Should I give you because there is a big vote. I'll give you a little, I'll focus you, because there is an option here. Would you prefer a family childcare budget to be handed over? So that's where the parents choose how to spend it, which might be to pay themselves, might be to pay grandparents, nursery, whatever, or for all that money to go directly to childcare providers to reduce the costs?
I don't think that's an easy choice to make, Charlie Charlton. I think it's bigger than that, and I'm not going to bore everyone with all of the issues on how we can put it right, but there are options there. And I think it is just, in terms of business, which I do agree with, and about businesses, because let's be honest, businesses and charities do step in where the government lets us down, okay? So businesses in listening and empathy is the best thing you can possibly do.
Okay, thank you. We'll continue that conversation later. We have some plans up our sleeve for next year to take on a whole new life with this topic, because we know there's an awful lot of interest and stories in this. So if this is something that you'd like to be part of, I'm going to have to be all like shifty, then do come to me with your stories and we'll kind of look at that. It might be a film. Anyway, follow me on LinkedIn for any updates, and also the Helix social channels. Right, a quick word about finances, because this was something I stumbled across as well, and claiming benefits you're entitled to. Please, if you are a working parent, will you take the time to find out what's available to you and your family? Because we've got, in the North East, relatively low levels of benefit take-up. Free school meals, for one, if it's not you, if it's somebody you know. £3.8 million was just lost in the last year by people. It was there for them and they didn't claim it for whatever reason, didn't claim it. So this could be a lot of help. So please go and have a look and advise people you work with or know to do so. Can we have a massive thank you to our wonderful panel, Nathan Bent, Beth Hazon, David Ormston-Simpson, to all the people who've caught the mic ball today as well. I also want to give a special mention to Alex Black. He works over in the Lumen building at the Combined Authority, and he helped me go through some of these regions' most up-to-date figures, and that was fantastic. And all of these are about collaboration. We've developed a little family of freelancers where we're lean and mean on the day. So I want to give a quick shout out to Jordan on second camera, Thomas from Tyneside Photography, Natalie and Laura from Akoko Media on socials, Olivia's Kitchen on catering, Sally on events, and the Catalyst, Amelia, Molly, Nicola, Lauren and Stuart, who are just always so lovely. And this is going to totally embarrass somebody right now, but I'd like to give a special thank you to Katie Riley, who's at the back here. She'll absolutely hate this. But she has been a linchpin for us doing all this stuff at Helix. Because when I used to do the telly and the radio, I never put on events, I just used to front them. And she's had to take us by the hand with all of this events organisation. But she has a boyfriend who lives down south and works at Heathrow Airport, and she's going to go and live with him. So, so we've got to say bye to Katie, which is an absolute loss. She'll be up here doing some stuff. So come here. Come on. I know you never do this. Come on. Come on, give it up. You are a treasure. You're getting some flowers. Look at that. I always see this happening. Oh, God, Kate, I know. This is a point. Professional. Manages an Excel spreadsheet.
I love an Excel spreadsheet.
Loves an Excel spreadsheet, plays to all my weaknesses, and puts up with me and Chris. So I just really wanted to say thank you, and you deserved a little mention there. So thank you. And finally, a thank you to you guys for being here, because it is also very important. And to the People's Kitchen, our neighbours over the road, keep your donations going there. As we say, the conversation keeps going. There's loads more, and hopefully we can make changes here from the North East, be thought leaders in this field. You're great. Be in touch, and we'll see you soon.